again. So it goes through factors of patients in hospitals. It looks at patient outcomes, organization factors, and nurse characteristics and outcomes for nurses. And we'll have slides ahead that goes into this more, but just make sure that you find this chart and you look it over and you know it, okay? So, moving into patient factors, you have to look at what type of patients you have on your unit. Are they aging? Are they becoming more sick? Is your acuity getting higher? What comorbidities do they have? What stage of treatment are they in? And you look at this in a classification system, and there's two ways to do that. There's a prototype classification. It looks at the subjective and the descriptive area of the patient and puts them into categories that predict your patient's needs, that tell you what kind of staffing you need for those needs. And those are like diagnostic related groups, or DRGs. They feed that data into a system and they generate numbers. Then you have the factor evaluation system. This is going to be more objective. It looks at tasks, what your nurses are doing, and what the time it takes to do that. Then it's summed into hours that is required for direct care for each patient. So there's numerous problems that can arise when you look at staffing through these evaluation systems. If you don't have accurate and valid data, you're not going to be able to produce the right numbers to know what your staffing looks like. If there's differences in your staffing morale, that affects it. And when you don't have all of this as a basis to build upon, to build your staffing, you're looking at a liability. So it's the nurse manager or the charge nurse's job to report things like this, these patient factors, to the staffing office every day and almost justify why you have the staff there that you have. So when you look at nurse staffing, you have to look at hours in the patient day, you have to look at the skill mix of your nurses, and you have to look at the nurse staffing ratio. Now, in Texas, we do not have a mandated ratio like you hear of 1:4 in California. It's not supported by our legislation at this time. The American Nurses Association actually has a staffing plan approach. It requires a staffing committee that they like to be made up by at least 55% of direct care RNs that look at safe practices, and they discuss these in a council. They discuss things going on within their hospital and if they feel like their staffing is safe or not. The American Nurse Association is so behind this that they actually have a website, and this isn't necessarily something to remember for the test, but this is a website you want to remember when you get out onto the floors, because you want to make sure to protect your license that you are a part of safe staffing. And you may find that as you grow in your career and you get experience under your belt, you're asked to be on one of these councils. And for you to bring the best evidence from American Nurse Association is only going to be better for you and your patient outcomes. So how do we measure effective staffing, and how do we look at that? So we can look at the National Database of Nursing Quality Indicators. These are established by the ANA in 1994. They provide quarterly and annual reporting on these indicators. It looks at about 18 different things, and it's nurse-sensitive data. It has to do with patient falls, pain assessment, skill mixes of nurses. So, and this is all reported back to CMS, which again we talked about last week, has to do with our reimbursement. So, a benchmark report on your hospital. These are things that you want to also research so that you know what's expected of you when you get out on the floor.
Yeah, I hear them call it NDNQI, and
Yes.
I thought for years we're saying
Indian.
like the Indian.
Yes.
It's NDNQI, and all hospitals do it. You'll need to, if you are asked to be a part of it, be involved in it. It really is good information.
So staffing variables when you are looking to staff your unit. There's external and internal variables. This is something that I would want to take an extra look at in your book. It's going to come in handy later. So external variables, when you look at staffing, there's the State Department of Health Joint Commission. These are people who influence